There is a mechanic in Rocket League that everyone uses many times every single game. It's extremely far from being perfected and one of the most valuable skills a player can have. But despite this, most professional players still refuse to practice it. How is this possible?
It'll usually be like, my shooting sucks, I'm gonna try a shooting training pack, and then I'll play it for like an hour and have no difference. Honestly, maybe like once every 3 months I'll have a training pack.
Shooting is just about the most simplistic skill in all of Rocket League. But even to this day, the best players in the world continue to struggle with it again and again and again. What's the deal here? Well, there's a few theories on it. Okay, so if you had the choice to 100% completely master one skill in Rocket League, either air dribbling or shooting precision, which one would you choose?
It would definitely be shooting precision.
I would choose shooting precision.
I would choose shooting.
What if I added ceiling shots to that air dribble category, so you master both of those?
Shooting precision.
I think I'd still choose shooting.
I would stick with shooting.
What if I added flip resets to that category as well?
Like, it's really hard because, like, I mean, honestly, at that point, I'll go for those 3 mastered.
I think adding the flip reset in with how strong it is in the meta, I think that would be the tipping point, and I'd choose the first option.
I would still stick with shooting.
Wow. Okay. So shooting's pretty important. I think that's pretty clear.
Yeah, I would say that shooting is one of the most important fundamentals of Rocket League.
So although not every professional opinion completely agrees on where exactly you draw the line on this dilemma, it's pretty clear that shooting is an extremely valuable aspect of this game, which is exactly why it's so weird that most pros hardly practice shooting at all.
I honestly stopped practicing at some point. I don't like going into training packs. I just like free playing and having fun and stuff.
It's easy to not keep solid on those kind of basic skills, so I mean, I should practice it more.
Most pros I've had conversations with pretty much give the exact same answers. They agree that shooting is extremely important, but they still don't bother practicing it for themselves. The only possible explanation I can think of for this is that they're either just lazy or they think that practicing shooting doesn't actually work. Is that true? Believe it or not, there are a lot of very high-level players that think practicing shooting just isn't worth their time, despite knowing how important it is. The amount of time it takes to see real progress makes it simply not worth it. They practice for an hour, see no improvement, and go back to their normal free play habits. But what if you went beyond that first hour? Very few people actually have the patience to keep at it if they think it's wasting their time. So it's not widely known if you'd see improvement if you just kept going. This week, I am testing that out. I have no idea what happens after that first hour because I, like many other people, usually just get bored and give up at that point. So I've decided to practice shooting exclusively for 3 days straight in order to truly find out if there really is value beyond that first hour. So the biggest thing I'm worried about for this is my ability to stay focused during the whole time. I'm obviously going to be practicing the same thing for so many hours for 3 days straight. It might be a little hard. And when you go on autopilot, it's obviously much harder to actually learn from what you're doing because you're not really taking in all the information. Fortunately, I did have some good ideas to help keep all this practice time fresh. I asked some of the guys I talked with if they had any tips or suggestions for what to do during this experiment, and they actually had some really good insight that I'll be sharing over the course of these 3 days. I still don't know how many hours specifically I'm going to spend each day on actually practicing this. I'm probably just going to go for as long as I possibly can until I can't really learn anymore without taking a break. That was a good one. The first exercise I did was, of course, aim training. It's already something I enjoy doing just when I'm hanging out anyway, so I figured it would be a good place to start. The big thing about it is it really humbles you, because if you think your shooting is already really accurate, you'll be immediately proven wrong when you try this. But at the same time, it's really satisfying when you snipe one from long distance. Over the course of the first hour, it looked like I was getting a little bit better, but it honestly just felt like I was getting more and more warmed up, so it wasn't real improvement just yet. This is also the point where I really want to stop, and it's only been an hour. But we are going past that and seeing if I actually can get long-term improvement from practicing over and over and over again for multiple days straight. And by the end, I would finally queue some ranked games to see how much of this practice pays off in my actual gameplay. But because I am getting so bored of this specific mode, I'm gonna go to a different exercise. Next up, I switched to some shooting precision training packs. Normally, I find training packs pretty boring, just like most pros. I hardly ever use them, but luckily, Verge had a tip for me that changed the way I view them, which made it way more enjoyable.
I tell myself out loud where I'm trying to place the ball, and if I don't place it there, then I know I did something that I didn't intend to do. I know I wasn't as precise as I wanted to be.
So with that information, I began a routine with each training pack. I'd place each shot top left, then once I hit that, I'd place it top right, and once I did both of those, I'd mirror the shot and do the exact same thing. Top left and then top right. So it's basically 4 different objectives for each shot before I even move on to the next one. If I miss my spot, then that means I obviously missed. So top right. There we go. Not bad. Not bad. That's not bad right there. Whoa. After a pretty long time, I finally finished my first run of the pack, so I moved on to a different one and used the same 4-shot routine. This one was a lot more difficult, even though they were from a lot closer. The first pack was filled with a bunch of half volleys, but this one had all of them completely in the air. It took me at least like half an hour before I got through the whole thing, and it's only 10 shots total. Clearly, I had a lot of room for improvement. I finished the rest of that day repeating those same exercises, and it ended up being about 5 hours total of practice. Although my results were getting better, I still wasn't completely sure if I was actually improving yet. And at this point, I was also pretty sure that the true answer wouldn't be revealed until I actually got to implement it in ranked. Anyway, yeah, so the title of the stream today, I'm doing a video where I'm like kind of doing an investigation on shooting in Rocket League, I guess. And I am exclusively practicing shooting for 3 days straight to see if I notice any difference. Doing part of day 2 on stream was definitely for the better. I felt held even more accountable to actually practice it properly since I had all these people hanging out watching. It turned into a nice little thing where we were all practicing alongside each other, so I enjoyed it a lot better than just on my own. Unfortunately, about an hour in, the left stick on my controller suddenly became super loose. All of a sudden, it started spinning freely as I pushed it around, which was bad because now when I was shooting, sometimes my thumb would just slide around it as it spun, so I had way less grip. Luckily, it wasn't so bad to ruin the entire session. I was still able to get some really good practice in, and I even got a new personal best streak on aim training, thanks to another tip I started using from Verge.
Ball net ball is what I call it. Usually you just focus on the ball, putting a line between the ball to the net where you want it to go, and then you look at the ball, generate that idea. Look at the net, see where you want to place it, look back at the ball, and that should give you enough information to line up exactly the shot you want to take in your head. It's in my power and accuracy video where I talk about ball net ball and I break it down if you want more info.
Very good.
Little shameless plug, little shameless plug.
Nice. Nice. Top right now. Nice. That was easy. Something about it. There we go. Nice. There we go. As I continued grinding through it, I really started picking up the pace. These arrow shots started getting a lot easier now that I was used to them. After a couple hours, I watched a tutorial on shooting to double check I wasn't missing any big tips, and it basically confirmed that my technique was correct. I just had to really put in the reps to improve, which is exactly what I was doing. An hour later, I finished off the stream with some hand exercises, which I honestly should have been doing since the start of this whole thing because my hands were really feeling sore after all this. And then later that night, I put in a couple more hours to bring my total practice time for the day up to 5 hours once again. I won't spend too much time talking about day 3 because it was more of the same, but I did implement a new exercise that I learned from Shock.
I feel like everyone's initial go-to is like air roll shots, but I feel like a lot of people are very good at air roll shots. Like that feels very normal. Placing shots in the top shelf of the net when the ball is completely rolling across the ground, so you have to generate all the height by yourself. That's extremely easy to mess up. So when I do practice shots, it's when they're rolling directly across the ground and I have to generate my own height or having to keep it down on a bounce shot.
So I made my own training pack for that and started experimenting with it. It turned out to be a lot harder than it looked because even though the ball isn't bouncing at all, depending on your angle and speed, you actually need to attack the ball differently in order to get the perfect height. So I did some practice with that, felt like I saw a little bit of progress by the end. And a final side thing I realized on the day was that I didn't actually need to wear my headphones, so I started blasting some music through my speakers as I was practicing, and that made it a lot more enjoyable considering I spent another 5 hours in training on that day. Once that was done, instead of waiting until tomorrow, I decided to queue up some matches while I was still in the mindset. This was supposed to be the part where I show you guys how well I did in ranked and how many games I won, but unfortunately, that's not what actually happened. This turned out to be one of those ranked sessions. I already underestimated how well I would perform overall because somehow it didn't cross my mind that I haven't practiced any other aspect of Rocket League in 3 days. Now combine that with teammates that also weren't playing well, and I didn't exactly win all my games like I had planned. But on the bright side, I can tell you for sure that the hours of shooting practice I had been doing for the past 3 days absolutely had a positive positive impact, but not in the way I was expecting. My shooting precision had clearly improved a lot, but that didn't mean I never missed a shot. Blunders still happened pretty much just as often as they did before, but my precision when it wasn't a blunder was much more accurate than before. An even bigger difference I noticed was my ability to simply hit the ball hard from almost any situation. Especially ones where I had to get a pretty wide angle hit, I somehow still generated a ton of power, which I guarantee I never would have before. I even scored a couple goals that way. My ability in general to just put the ball where I wanted was through the roof, even in situations that I didn't exactly practice. Like this wall shot, I didn't even practice those, but I still somehow knew I was going to pin it perfectly as I went for it. Overall, to answer this whole dilemma of does shooting practice actually work, the answer is yes. Only thing is, there's not really any amount of practice that can completely eliminate those open net blunders. So even in pro play, I don't think we can expect open shots to be perfected anytime soon, even if they did indeed practice it. Which actually makes a lot of sense now that I think back to those conversations I had with them.
In general, the nature of Rocket League makes precision anything very hard. And I think that just comes down to the fact that we're human and we can't do something perfectly repeatable every time.
It's really about your ability to be in the right spot at the right time, read a defense, read their touches. With how adaptive that is and how variable it is, I just don't think there's ever a way that can be perfected.